The circulatory system, part 2, the structures of the heart. The heart is about the size of your fist, and it's located under your sternum and a little bit to the left. Basically has 4 chambers and many major blood vessels that are associated with it. It pumps your blood through 2 circuits, either the pulmonary circuit which goes to the lungs, or the systemic circuit that pumps it to the rest of the body. Again, we see here the ribs encircle it for good protection, and it's located below the sternum and a little bit to your left. The pericardium, which is going to be that outside protective layer, has 3 basic layers. The fibrous pericardium, the outermost layer, dense connective tissue, attaches to the sternum, the vertebral column, and the diaphragm, keeping things in place. So we have our parietal pericardium, which is the next inner layer, and then the visceral pericardium, which is the delicate layer against the actual heart. The pericardial cavity is between the parietal and the visceral pericardium, and there's serous fluid that reduces friction. The job of the pericardium is to protect the heart, attach it in place, prevent overflow from the blood, and give it a relative friction-free environment. The muscle walls. The epicardium is the visceral pericardium, and it reduces friction of the heart. The myocardium is going to be our thick muscular portion of our heart. This is most of the cardiac muscle. And then we have our endocardium, which is the innermost layer, and it's mainly going to be the epithelium and the connective tissue. It is continuous with the inner linings of the blood vessels. We have 4 main chambers of the heart. We have the atria, which are the 2 top chambers, and they have thin muscle walls. We have the right that receives the blood from the body, and the left that receives the blood from the lungs. Then we have our 2 bottom chambers, which are known as ventricles. They have thicker cell walls because they have to be able to pump and push the blood out to its other places. The right ventricle sends it to the lungs, and then the left sends it to the rest of the body. So the left ventricle actually has the thickest walls because it has to have enough muscle mass to push the blood from your heart to the rest of the body. The septum is a muscle in the middle that divides the heart into the right and left side. So here we see our septum, and we see our right atrium and our right ventricle. And then we see our left atrium and our left ventricle. Again, our left ventricle has this huge, thick wall here so that it can pump and squeeze that blood out to the rest of the body. The gates. There are valves that control the flow of blood between the chambers and the rest of the body. There are 2 types. The atrioventricular valve and the semilunar valve. The inside gates. The atrioventricular valve separates the atria and the ventricles and prevents blood from flowing backwards. Now these valves do not open and close on their own. The blood does that. As the blood is pushed, it opens, and as the blood stops being pushed and starts wanting to go backwards, it pushes these valves closed. So again, the valves do not open and close on their own. The blood pushes them. The tricuspid valve is on the right side, and it has 3 cusps, or 3 flaps. Then we have the mitral valve, or the bicuspid valve, which is on our left, and it is shaped like a mitre, which is a hat, and it has 2 cuspids, or 2 flaps. The cuspids are attached to the chordae tendineae, which are attached to the papillary muscles. Now, again, these chordae tendineae and these papillary muscles do not open and close these valves. They prevent the cuspids from going backwards and causing a prolapsed valve. So they stop them when they're closed, but they do not open and close them. They allow them to open and then stop them to close. Gates outside, the semilunar valves. They have 3 cuspids and are shaped like moons. The pulmonary valve is between the arteries and the right ventricles. And the aortic valve is between the aorta and the left ventricle. So again, we see the valves. Again, a tricuspid valve here because we have three, another tricuspid, and another tricuspid. And here is our bicuspid valve that only has two flaps, or two cuspids. The pathways in. The vessels that lead back to the heart are called the veins. And there are three major veins, there are actually two major veins that we're going to talk about, that lead to the right atrium. The superior vena cava, which is the blood from the upper portion of the body, and the inferior vena cava, which is carrying blood from the lower portion of the body. They come together to create the pulmonary veins that empty into the left atrium. The pathways out. We have the pulmonary artery, which leads to our lungs from our right ventricle, and our aorta, that leads to the rest of our body from our left ventricle. Now, off of the aorta, we have three aortic branches off of the aortic arch. We have our brachiocephalic branch, we have our left carotid artery, and we have our subclavicle artery. And again, off of our main aorta, we have these three branches that take blood to primary parts of our body. Again, we can see our aortic arch here. And again, we see our brachiocephalic trunk, our left common carotid artery, and then our left subclavian artery. The heart skeleton, or the outside of the heart, is made up of dense rings of connective tissue. They surround the pulmonary trunk and the aorta and allow it to have anchors for the heart valves. The coronary artery also provides blood flow to your heart muscles. Blockages can cause muscle strain and lead to an angina, which are baby heart attacks. A myocardial infarction is death of the myocardial or the cardiac muscle. If there are blockages, you may have to have a stent or a bypass put in so that blood can still flow around your heart. The nodes of the heart. These are your pacemakers, what keeps everything in rhythm. Your cyanoatrial node is electrically stimulates both of the atria, and it's found at the top here. And then our atrioventricular node, just found a little bit lower, stimulates both of your ventricles. Damage to your cyanoarterial node can cause you to need to have an electronic pacemaker actually put in so that your heart can pump correctly and they can actually work together.
Begins where the CO2 blood enters the heart, through the tricuspid valve, to the right ventricle, the pulmonary artery and lungs. Once inside the lungs, it dumps its carbon dioxide and picks up its oxygen supply. Then it's back to the heart through the pulmonary vein, through the atrium and left ventricle. To bring the oxygenated blood to the cells. The tissues in the cell trade off wasted CO2, which is carried through the venules and the veins, through the larger vena cava to the atrium and lungs, and we're back to where we started in the heart.
So, we'll be hearing that again, but it does do a very good job at showing you how the blood flows through the heart. Sounds of the heart, which it should have a lub-dub sound, and that's two areas actually closing. The lub is going to be the tricuspid, and the bicuspid valve slamming shut together, and the dub should be our pulmonary and aortic lunar valve slamming shut together. If you hear a lub-dub-shh, 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 it's typically a heart murmur, and some blood is breaking through those valves, causing a leaky valve. So here are some questions that you might want to go back through and make sure that you can answer from your notes. See you later.